Hey, what's going on? It's Kirby Leisman here, my wife Sydney, and we're excited to bring to you guys another Why We Wake podcast. Especially for the guys who are out competing this weekend out in Colorado Springs, which is an area where Sydney's actually pretty familiar with. So I wish we could be out there with you and enjoying the awesome climate out there. Getting away from the humidity would be awesome. But anyway, the message that we want to bring to you guys this week is based on the life of Christ. Now, the life of Christ is obviously one of the most important parts about the Christian faith because, obviously Jesus Christ and Christian faith is all based around the theology of Christ coming to earth and living the perfect life and dying on the cross for our sins. But the interesting thing about that is, where did that all start? I don't know if a lot of people know, but, and I'm sure if you know the Christmas story, of any depth, you'll know that, Jesus was born of a virgin, the Virgin Mary. His father was Joseph. For his child upbringing, he lived the life of a normal child. He grew up just like we did and had a family, had friends, had a community. And,
I'm sure he had boogers in his nose and dirty diapers, just like any other kid, too. So it was like he grew up just like anyone would. He wasn't like anything special, at that time of his life. So I think that says a lot about how he can relate to us, because he's not just something that's out in the sky somewhere. He literally has been on this earth and been through what we've gone through as people. Right.
Yeah, for sure. A way that I've heard it be explained is almost like, God the creator and Jesus his son. It kind of relates to if you got an artist who creates a painting and then he basically paints himself in the painting. And the unique thing about that is it's almost as if the other characters in the painting reject the artist who came up with it originally. So when you think about it on those terms, it's pretty incredible to think how Jesus came to this earth and the people around him rejected him. And when you read through the New Testament, you see that he was constantly met with opposition and people challenging him and who he was, because he, not directly, but inadvertently kind of, put out the vibe that he was the Son of God and he was this deity and this royal priest and this, king is who he was. And the people at that time really did not accept that idea because they were expecting the Son of God to come in a much different way. And I think it threw the religious people off of that time.
Yeah, it really offended them. It angered them. That who do you think you are? Attitude, which is so crazy because he was the King of Kings standing right before them, and yet they continued to ridicule them and reject what he had to say because it was different than their traditional religious beliefs.
Yeah, their expectations weren't met.
Mm-hmm.
So then when you go and you start reading in the New Testament, you'll see that Jesus chose 12 disciples to walk with him and see how he lived his life. And those are the people who ended up actually writing the books of the New Testament. You got Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And that is eyewitness testimony to the life of Jesus. I mean, you can't get much better documentation of the life of Jesus than right there in the Bible. And these aren't people that, heard of what Jesus did and wrote about it many years later. These were people who actually lived with him, walked with him, saw the miracles that he was doing, and then documented them. So we have incredible eyewitness testimony to the life of Jesus.
So what did the life of Jesus look like? Well, in 3 years' time, from when Jesus got baptized from John the Baptist, that's when his earthly ministry started. And in those 3 years, him and the disciples went around to all these different people and places, and they preached the gospel. They preached grace and forgiveness and love. They did mighty miracles. People were healed of diseases and sickness and leprosy, anything you could think of. Jesus was doing it. He was living the perfect life, a sinless life, and being an example to people of hope, and love. And him and his disciples went around, they preached, they did good works for 3 years. And then eventually, the offense of the religious people of the time, they were called the Pharisees, eventually their offense became so much that they delivered Jesus up to be crucified. And they did that by using one of Jesus' disciples, Judas, to betray Jesus into their hand. Pontius Pilate was the Roman ruler of the time, and though he found no fault in Jesus, the crowds insisted that Jesus be crucified. So he did, and the Creator God became the creation. He came to earth knowing what his fate would be, knowing what he had to do to set the people free, to set all people free, not just Christians or believers. He came to set every single person on this earth, past, present, and future, free. And in the crucifixion, they spit on him and they mocked him and they ridiculed him, and he was beaten terribly and whipped, and his back was shredded and bloody, and gosh, he did all of that for us. He came for, and the people he was coming to save were the ones with the whip in their hand. And that literally just blows my mind. And it makes my heart so sad because, that could have been me. That could have been me holding that whip, just being so ignorant and not even knowing and not understanding that I was hurting my Savior, someone who was coming to set me free from my bondage and my pain and my past and my sin. Even when Jesus was hanging on the cross, there were men on the cross next to him making fun of him, and saying, if you are the King of Kings, then take yourself down off of this cross. And it's just so crazy, and what he did on that cross is so underplayed, in my opinion, because he literally became the sin of every single person, past, present, and future. Any sin that's ever been done, he became that. His body was transformed. He became every sickness and disease, and he took that in his body, not just the whippings, but it says that he wasn't even recognizable on that cross. It even says in Luke 22:44 that Jesus sweat drops of blood while he was on the cross. And I looked up what that means, and it means that his heart had ruptured. So I don't know about you, but my question is always why? Why would Jesus come to this earth to go through all of the things that he went through? That was the most brutal death that anyone has faced on this earth, and he knew it was coming. I can't even begin to imagine. But when the reason why, it said that he saw the joy before him. And when I think about that, and I wonder why he did this, it's because he was looking ahead in the future. He was looking at your life, where you are right now, and said, it's worth it. It is worth it for him. It was worth it for him. It's worth it for her. It doesn't matter if they ever believe on my life. It doesn't matter if they become a Christian. It's worth it for them so that they can eventually have access to step into what I'm doing for them if they would like.
That freedom is so important because when you truly take that step to believe that this is a historical thing that took place on earth, that it really does set you free to live the life that God has fully intended for you to live, and that can only be found in Jesus and what he did on the cross for us. And the only unforgivable sin is denying that this really happened.
Yeah, it's true. It says that in the Bible that the only sin that sends people to hell, the only sin, is not believing upon Jesus Christ. And the story doesn't end with him dying on the cross. The story goes further. He did die on the cross, and they took him down and they buried him. And he was dead for 3 days, was it? I don't remember. But anyway, in that time, he actually went to hell, stole the keys to the kingdom back, and our access to live in grace and have access to have the authority returned to us that was stolen from Adam and Eve in the garden. And then he rose to sit in heaven on the right side of the Father. And that's what makes our faith so unique, is not the fact that he died, but the fact that he rose again and that he's alive. And he was actually seen on earth multiple times before he went and ascended into heaven.
Yeah, he presented himself to 5,000
Mm-hmm.
after he had died. Pretty incredible. And those people that he presented himself to were all believers. He never did reveal himself to a single person that hadn't already believed that he was the King of Kings.
Yeah. It's a statement that I heard once that really affected me. It was, Jesus lived the life that we could not live, and he died the death that we should have died. And that rocks my world. I don't know about you guys, but I just think that the life of Jesus is so important. And you can read about it in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I mean, you can read one or all to kind of get a picture of more fully of what his life was like. But he is the pivotal point about what Christianity is all about. He is why we have a faith that's real and alive compared to all other religions.
It's true. Yeah, so really, really impactful stuff, and just thankful that you guys were able to tune in and, hear about some of the details of the life of Jesus and what that means to us, and just making that step to become a believer in Jesus. And knowing the details is one of the biggest parts of being able to make an educated decision on whether or not you want to take that step to commit your life to Christ. And if that's something that you're feeling led to do, please reach out to us, send us a message, give us a call. We'd love to talk you through that if you have questions, because honestly, it's good to have questions, because when you read through the New Testament, you see, Jesus' disciples, they had questions all the way up until the point of where he was hanging on the cross. They had questions, but the thing is once you make that final decision to believe that this is real and this is really meant for us, then it's fully life transforming.
Yeah, and I hope you'll join us next time, because next week we're talking about something that's really close to my heart, which is, it's called Knowing the True God. And I feel like God has really been misinterpreted and portrayed in a way that I don't believe is his true character, in an angry way. And so I hope that you'll join us next time. It's going to be really good, and hopefully open people's eyes to seeing God in a new light, in a new perspective. So we wish you the best of luck at the contest this weekend. Really do wish we were there. Colorado Springs is so beautiful, and we're excited to see you guys next time.
Catch you later.